Hey, this is Madhu and Abhi from Inspiring Ideas podcast. Finished a classy episode with Hrishikesh Desai, who was the Masterchef sensation and who's one of the 16 experts in the world on cyber physical systems on how humans and computers will interact in future. Rishi, why do you think people should tune into this episode?
Well, a bullet train has arrived on the station. The destination only takes about 30 minutes of travel time. And along that journey, you're going to listen to food, artificial intelligence, polymer chemistry, anthropology, patent examination, potatoes, and MasterChef Australia. So join in to the episode.
Woohoo!
Fantastic. Thanks, Rishi. Hi, I'm Abhinav.
I'm Madhu.
Welcome to the Inspiring Idea podcast. We interview people from across the world and share their life stories and success formulas with our audience. We hope this will inspire you to achieve your dreams. So, let's get the show started. Our guest today is an applied cybernetics practitioner ensuring ethical, responsible, and assured application of artificial intelligence. He also holds a senior leadership position with IP Australia. He's got another special talent, which he was able to showcase through his culinary skills in MasterChef Australia a few years ago, and he also made it to the top 5. Please welcome Rishi Desai. Welcome to the show, Rishi.
Thank you, Abhi. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. Good to have you on our show. Rishi, in next 30 minutes, we will explore your life journey and deep dive into the key moments which contributed to who you are today. So let's get the show started. Rishi, Albert Einstein said, I have no special talent. I am only passionately curious. It is a powerful statement from one of the world's greatest inventors. You have been very curious all through. Tell us about your life journey.
It's a very daunting thing that you're quoting Albert Einstein before I begin. I'm humbly going to say that I'm not in that caliber, but in saying that I come from a family of doctors. So my grandfather, my father, my uncle, everybody has been a doctor in the household. And I'm the only ugly duckling who didn't choose medicine as the field. Ended up doing polymer engineering from Maharashtra Institute of Technology in Pune. And then from there, I moved on to do my master's in material science and engineering in Rochester, New York, in the US. It was just after 9/11, so it was really difficult to get for an immigrant to get a job in America. So I decided to come back to India again in 2005 and started working for General Electric in Bangalore. In their IP division. So that's where my IP journey started. So I started working as a patent analyst with General Electric, looking at their applied chemistry area and trying to file patents for GE. Obviously wanted to always explore other countries. So decided to apply for a job with IP Australia back in 2007. They were advertising patent examiners to come and join them. Especially during the mining boom, because they weren't getting any people within Australia to come and work in Canberra. So that's how I ended up in Canberra and with IP Australia. And since 2008, been with IPA. It's almost coming up to 13 years. Worked in very different positions, including patents, including finance, doing budgets for the agency. And now I am a assistant general manager in trademarks and design. So I've sort of got the whole IP perspective now from patents, trademarks, designs, and PBR. So that's what we do at IPA. And in 2013, decided to suddenly change course. I've always been passionate about food, cooking since I was 5 years old. My mother has a food business back in Kolhapur, India. Since as a child, I've always seen her cooking wonderful things. So really picked up that passion and decided to put my hand up for MasterChef Australia. So that was the season 5 of MasterChef. Ended up in Melbourne for 6 months, locked up in a house with 24 other contestants. And living a life in a bubble because you're not supposed to talk about it. You're not supposed to disclose anything until the entire show is being aired on television. Took us 6 months to film that. Ended up being 4th in the competition. So went through almost all 65 episodes. It was a really wonderful experience, and we can talk about that later. But a couple of things that I did in between was I'm really passionate about the Indigenous knowledge in Australia and really passionate about the Aboriginal culture of Australia. and decided to go on a 6 month secondment with Jawan, Jawan is an organization that works across public and private sector and places expertise like people expertise into Indigenous organizations. So I worked on a project at La Perouse in Sydney with Gujaga Childcare Centre. So they were looking to see if they can teach their Aboriginal language, which is Dharawal language in Sydney. So they're looking to teach that language to their kids. So trying to find them if they can get their registered training organization certificate. So I did that for 6 months, really wonderful experience. And last year, I was thinking about doing further studies. I mean, I've been working in my field for 20 years. So I decided that it was time for me to reskill myself and do the next 20 years of my life in a different field altogether. Really passionate about AI and how AI is going to play a massive role in our children's lives. And wanted to make sure that the use of AI and the applications of AI are ethical, are unbiased, and are effective for everyone in the community, not just the privileged ones and not just the ones who are technologically savvy. So that's how essentially I've come across for the last, 20 odd years in my professional career.
Man, I should say that the last 2-3 minutes have been, it's just like going back to India and listening to 100,000 Walla, like a Diwali festival. That's so amazing to hear, to be honest. Just want to give a breather to the audience, and you have done amazing. I just wanted to really dive deep into some of these aspects, and I just wanted to start with your MasterChef journey. So tell us about your experience of getting selected and making it to the top 4. That should have been really amazing.
It was really wonderful journey. I mean, I apart from cooking, I enjoyed my time with the contestants, with the judges. Just doing a TV show was absolutely wonderful. Completely different experience to anything you would know in the normal world. And I will say normal world. It is reality television, right? It's like you are in a bubble. You don't know what's happening outside that bubble. You don't care for those 6 months what's happening outside that bubble.
You can use phones, or even phones and internet are not allowed.
Nothing is allowed. So no phones are allowed. Your wallet's taken away. Your passport's taken away. You are locked up in a house with 24 other people. You only get to call your family once a week for 10 minutes, and even the calls are monitored. You only get to visit your family once a month for an afternoon. So I used to fly from Melbourne to Canberra on a Sunday morning, have lunch with family, and fly back in the afternoon, fly back to Melbourne. So it used to be really tight to run ship because it's important for them because they have, I mean, back then they had a budget of $25 million. And if anything does come out of the contestants and if it gets disclosed before the show is actually aired, that money is almost wasted. So it is really tight to run because of that reason. There are lots of commercial commitments they have to make sure that they abide by. So it was a wonderful journey. The initial journey was really hard because you have no idea what the expectations are. You have no idea what the hell you're doing in there. And because there are 24 contestants, the filming starts about 4 a.m. in the morning and finishes about 10 p.m. at night. So there's a massive days. And and they set the expectations. They tell you that there's going to be a lot of starting and stopping. So you literally rush for 10 minutes, and then you wait for a couple of hours. And that's how literally the filming works, because you got to understand the cameras have to be reset. There are different angles they got to film. So just the drive-in shots into the kitchen in the cars that we used to have, those drive-in shots, that clip plays on television for what, 5-10 seconds for us to drive in. It took us 3 hours to do the drive-in shots, just that. So you have to understand how much effort that goes into making a great show like MasterChef, and that's why it seems really nice on television, because they put in a lot of effort to make that happen. In terms of food, really amazing to work with great chefs, like obviously Gary and George were there. Matt's a wonderful character as well. He's really funny and jovial. Had an opportunity and privilege to work with Heston for a week, Heston Blumenthal. They were just mind-blowing. Curtis Stone was there, Maggie Bay was there, all these wonderful chefs that you'd see on television, worked with them, learned so much from them. That is an incredible amount of information that just goes into your head for 6 months. And when you have 6 months dedicated to a topic of your passion, it just makes life wonderful because that's what you think about. You think about food, you sleep food, you walk food, you eat food, you work food. You're constantly in that environment. So has been really wonderful experience. And I want a quick example of how a typical day on filming happens. You wake up in the morning at 4 o'clock, the cameras are in your face. You get ready, get to the bus, get to the location. You start cooking. You start basically the filming process, and it's physically and emotionally tiring. Physically because you are standing and you are constantly for 12, 13 hours a day, but emotionally tiring because you go through lots of different emotions in a day. You are anxious in the morning because you don't know what's going to happen during the day. When you do realize that what the challenge is, you panic because you have no idea how you're going to make it happen. And once you start cooking, you are stressed because you are running against time. So that's a really important emotion that goes through your mind. And once you're done cooking, you're relieved because, oh, you're done now. But then again, you're anxious. So you go back again. The anxiety goes up because now judges are going to taste your food. And while they're tasting your food, you're panicking. Is it because you're looking at their faces and you're looking at the expressions and you go, are they liking it, not liking it? What's happening here? And then either you're relieved because they've loved your food, or you just panic because the next day you are in elimination. So these sorts of emotions you go through in a day, and it's really tiring and taxing, but you enjoy it.
Absolutely. It's interesting, Rishi, like I met Sashi last year, the MasterChef winner, and he was resonating the same feelings and he went through more or less the same experience that you spoke about. Do you reckon like MasterChef was kind of a major turning point in your life?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I've always been a bit quietly confident with my capabilities, but one of those things is when you go on television and you actually display it to people, and when people come and tell you that they loved you watching you, they have enjoyed watching you, they think you're amazing, you sort of build that confidence a bit more. I'm not saying I'm overconfident, but it sort of gives you that confidence that yes, you can do things. So I've since then don't mind putting myself in precarious situations where I don't know what's going to happen, and that's really important, especially in my job and what I did last year with Raje as well. Putting myself in situations which are uncertain, which require you to be resilient, require you to learn a lot of things. I don't mind doing that because I know how to handle myself and I know how to handle the emotions. So that's sort of one of the tangible capabilities or skills I gained from MasterChef apart from food.
Awesome. That's a great story on your cooking journey, Rishi. Now, talking about your experience getting into patent subject matter and progressing into taking a leadership position in Australian government, let us explore about your 12 plus years of journey in this space.
So as I said, I applied for a job in Australia with IP Australia when I was in Bangalore. So that journey began in Bangalore. Luckily, I was one of the very few lucky people who get to come to Australia with a job letter in their hand. And I came into Canberra straight away. I started as a trainee patent examiner, and then went through training and became a patent examiner in about a year's time. But I've always like to challenge myself because I don't sit in one position pretty comfortably for a long period of time. If I know on a Monday morning how exactly my week's going to pan out, I decide at that point in time I have to change role. So for me, that is the bar that I set myself, that I don't like to have regularity in my life. So every 2 years or so, I have changed role with IP Australia. So the first couple of years, I was a patent examiner. And then the next couple of years, I worked as the executive officer for the general manager of patents. And that sort of provided me with an amazing amount of exposure to what happens at the senior leadership level and how the operation of an IP agency works, and how budgets work, how finance works, how people management works, how recruitment and workforce strategy works. So it gave me a lot of exposure to that. After that, I decided to put my hand up for a leadership position, middle management leadership position back in patent examination. Luckily for me, I got the position and started managing about 5 to 6 staff, 5 to 6 patent examiners under me. So looking after their quality of work, looking after their customer delivery, and training them as well, obviously. And then I went on MasterChef for 6 months. During that sort of break, I went on MasterChef, came back, and luckily there was an opening for a director's role. So this is looking after an entire section of patent examination. So about 25, 30 people in a section of patent examiners. So looking after them. So luckily, again, got the opportunity to apply for that job and got selected and became a director of an applied chemistry patent examination section. 2 years down the track, I thought, oh, I got to change again because I know exactly how the week's going to pan out. So decided to throw my hat in for a job in finance, looking after budgets, looking after performance, looking after compliance for IP Australia. Obviously, as a government agency, you have lots of different regulations and acts that you have to comply with. So did that job, worked for the CFO for IP Australia, picked up a lot of financial compliance and government knowledge. Writing lots of different ministerials was one of the key things that I picked up as well. The language is very different to you write in a normal letter or a normal application. And 2 years down the track, an opportunity opened up in trademarks. Again, another step up from where I was in finance to be an assistant general manager. So it's sort of like a 2 year span that I changed my role. And now I've been in trademark for 3 years. Mind you, one of those years was I spent in ANU. So literally, potentially just 2 years. So I've decided to change my role again.
Oh, okay.
Luckily, last week, in fact, got an opportunity to apply for an acting position as the general manager of trademarks. And I'll be acting general manager starting January. So
congratulations on that.
Thank you. So this is leading 240 staff. It's a massive role.
Awesome.
Another amazing story, man. So you've been kicking goals, to be honest, and every 2 years and putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation. And that's what we are doing ourselves. Every Saturday and Sunday, we spend a lot of time researching and doing podcasting. And that's how we have to change the status quo. Otherwise, we will be stuck in one place and without learning as such. Yeah,
exactly. People think about change and people think about change is really uncertain. Change is really scary. But if you don't change, if you stay in one place, you're actually going backwards because people around you are moving forward. So you have to continually change yourself, continually change what you do. And it's one of those things, right? You put yourself in a situation which you are not sure how it's going to pan out. But what's the worst thing that's going to happen? You fail a couple of times and you get up again and you go. So people have capabilities. Everybody has inherent capabilities. It's just that they don't get to demonstrate those. So I think people need to put themselves in a uncomfortable situation every now and then.
That's a gold nugget, buddy. Thank you so much. And having seen the patent side from an IP Australia standpoint, so what's in it for the customer? So let's say if I want to register a patent myself and I've got something, how do I go about? Can you paint a customer journey for us?
Sure. So Australia is really lucky to have really great inventions that come from Australia. If you think about inventions like the Hills hoist or clothes dryer that you have in your backyard, that's an Australian invention. The Victor lawnmower is an Australian invention. Then you think about things like flight data recorders and black box recorders, Australian invention. Wi-Fi was invented by CSIRO in Canberra, so
wow.
It's an Australian invention. And the last one I'll talk about is polymer banknotes. The banknotes we have is an Australian invention. So we've been lucky to have some amazing inventions in Australia. And again, all the inventions go back to an IP system. Most of the inventions, I should say, go back to the IP system. So what happens as an inventor is, if let's say you are an inventor in the backyard, you have just invented an idea, you have just come up with an idea, and you have a tangible outcome from that idea. What you can do is apply for what we call a provisional patent. Provisional patent doesn't give you anything except a firm flag in the ground. It shows the world that you are the inventor of this particular idea. Now, at that stage, you don't have to have an absolute exact understanding of that idea. So you have about 1 year from the provisional patent application date to the actual patent application date to refine your idea or refine your invention. Once you have that, what you do is apply for a patent. Now, that's a bit of a technical process. Most of the ideas in Australia are patented through an IP attorney. And they will help you guide how you draft a claim. Well, claim gives you a monopoly. So claim sort of gives you a defined monopoly which to practice your idea or practice your invention and commercialize your invention. So you draft a claim and it goes through an examination process. So it could take up to 3 to 3.5 years from the initial idea inception to the examination process, because there are lots of hurdles you have to, not hurdles, but there are lots of formalities you have to go through. At about 3.5 years, the patent examiner picks up your application, and then they look at how novel it is, which is how new the idea is, and how inventive or obvious your idea is. And if they think it's novel, and if they think it isn't obvious, and there are a couple of other legislative requirements, but if they think those two critical criteria are met, they will accept your patent and accept your claim, which is your monopoly. And if you accept a claim, then you just pay a little small fee of acceptance, and then within certain time frame you get a grant, which gives you a absolute monopoly to exploit your idea and commercialize your idea for 20 years from the date of provisional application. So you have 20 years protection with patents.
That's very interesting. Rishi, I'm keen to know your views about how patent and its relationship with driving innovation.
Not just patents, but if you think about all the 4 IP rights we have in IP Australia, we've got patents, designs, trademarks, and plant breeders' rights. All 4 are a key pillar for economic growth and jobs. If you think about trademarks, for example, all the businesses who operate, small and medium businesses who are struggling right now through COVID, unfortunately, and we are helping out those businesses at IP Australia. But if you think about them, for them to have a trademark for their goods and service, it's a critical component of their business, because that gives you certainty, that gives you quality, that gives you assurance that you are buying it from the person who actually has a quality product or a quality service to deliver. Think about things like we think you see on supermarket shelves. You pick up an item that you have tried and tested because you've used it before. It could be a canned tomatoes, it could be a tomato sauce, it could be anything from the supermarket.
Yeah.
You pick up an item because you see that brand name, and that brand name is critical for the business, because that assures you that the quality and the certification that goes through. So that is a trademark for us. So that gives a business a lot of economic opportunities. With patents, again, it's a massive economic pillar, because for a patent, if you do get a patent, you can exploit it for 20 years and nobody can copy it and nobody can actually use your idea. So think about Wi-Fi. When CSR invented Wi-Fi, they have 20 years monopoly. They had 20 years monopoly. I think the patent is now expired. But they had 20 years monopoly to monopolize Wi-Fi. And I think there was a case in Australia which went to the High Court or Federal Court. I don't remember which one it was, but it went to High Court, I think. It ended up being an infringement of the Wi-Fi patent by someone in America and in Australia. And the High Court paid a $273 million fine. It gave $270 million fine to the companies using Wi-Fi, although they didn't have a patent. So CSIRO got a massive boost in their coffers with that sort of fine. So it does create a lot of economic advantage for the companies who apply for patents. And same thing with designs and plant breeders' rights. All the vegetables you buy these days, most of them are drought resistant because Australia is a drought-ridden country. And those rights are, and those plants and those vegetables have been, the farmers have put in a lot of research into that to make it drought resistant, and we protect that in PBR.
All right, that's really fantastic. Rishi, in your introduction, you said that you recently completed a master's course from 3AI Institute, which is one of the very prestigious institutes. Oh, can you give us more information about what 3AI is all about and what made you do this particular course?
So I'll provide a bit of context as to why I got interested in AI. I've got nothing, before I think 2015, I had no clue about AI. I mean, I know AI existed because we watched Terminator and see that's what's going to happen to you. But apart from that, I had no interest. But IP Australia is really on the forefront of using technology to help our customers. So we have lots of AI applications we use within IP Australia to help our customers, especially in trademark space. So I sort of got into that, thinking about how AI is playing a massive role in our society, and it will play a massive role in future. And I sort of saw, not in IP Australia, but I saw a few examples of a wrong application of AI. You use AI just because it exists. And I thought that was something that I didn't agree with. For me, a solution looking for a problem is always disastrous. you must identify your problem first, and then you can go and find a solution. And if AI is the best solution for that problem, absolutely great, use it. But if you have a solution in hand like AI, and if you're looking for a problem, it will always end up in a disaster. So I had that philosophy in my mind, and I think I did a lot of critical thinking about AI and how it plays a role in society. So people think AI technology, for that matter, is just in isolation. Technology never works in isolation. Technology has a user to it, and the user has a society behind it, and there's a social connection between those users and the technology. And not just a social connection between user and technology, there's a social connection between different users using the same technology. So you start thinking about this technology, we like AI, and you look at these connections and you go, you can't ignore them. You can't design technology without understanding those social constructs that it exists within. And that sort of really made me think about it more and how it then broadly applies to what we do. So think about AI, right? If I start with an example, if AI application comes in and it gives you a particular solution, that solution inherently is going to make things more efficient and more productive, which means you need less amount of staff doing that job because now a machine is doing the job. Now that's fine because people say, oh, they'll get a job somewhere else, but they're not going to get a job somewhere else because the job market doesn't work like that. You have to upskill those people over a period of time for them to get new jobs. So now you're thinking about education policy. So you think about AI, you think about the economic policy and the job policy. And now you've got to think about education policy, because for them to upskill, the market has to have the need for them to be upskilling. So the education policy comes into play. So when you think about the education policy, the whole gamut of things comes into play. So the government comes into play because now you've got to regulate these things. So AI, when you think about it, it's not only the technology. You have the education, you have jobs, you have economic growth, you have government regulation, and all sorts of things coming together. And then you put in that mix society like Australia, where it's a multicultural society. So who you design the AI for? Do you design it for the majority of the population, which is Anglo-Saxon, or do you design it for a minority of population, which could be Aboriginal Indigenous people? So then you think about AI and go, who are we designing this for? How does the design look like, and how it is playing a role in society? That made me a lot of passionate about that. And at the exact time, Genevieve Bell, who is the director of 3AI, gave a talk at the National Library. And she started talking about these things. And I just fell in, like, I became a big fan of her because she was talking the exact same language I was thinking in my head. And at that point, she said that she's designing a pioneering course in applied cybernetics, looking at how you ethically, in an unbiased way and in an inclusive way, scale AI to achieve what it needs to achieve. So I decided to put my hand up because that's something that I couldn't have missed for the world. And luckily enough, my office again, which supported me back in Masterchef, and supported me again this time around as well. So I was lucky to have that.
That's so amazing, man. It's, in fact, you create that opportunity, and it's so important that you say that you are actually falling in love with somebody who's having a similar thought. In fact, I was actually looking at the Boy lectures in 2017 from Genevieve Bell, and I fell in love with the amount of information, the amount of considerations that she is making. And I'm always following 3AI from then. And even if you remember, I was always constantly getting in touch with you in the last 1 year or so, just so that I can learn. So coming back to the first cohort of 16 wonderful, wonderful people, coming out of this course, I'm extremely curious to know. They actually come from different backgrounds, as you know, somebody who's an anthropologist, policymaker, the digital transformation experts, lawyers, and whatnot. So how was it like for you to collaborate with such diverse set of experienced people, be it pre-COVID world and post-COVID world? And what was your key learning from those?
Genevieve was very passionate about making sure that a course that she designs has all the diversity from every field that AI is going to play a massive role in. Hence, we had people from anthropology, people from policy, government policy, people from IT, people from theater. There was a person who had done masters in visual arts. There was one person who was a social worker. There was one person who was a psychologist. There were people from a mathematician. so there are lots of people in that cohort, and there was a 50-50 ratio of male and female. So it was just a wonderful group of people. It's important to have that diversity, because when you have the diversity of not just age and not just the personalities, but diversity of topics that you talk about. So in terms of age, we had people from about 28 to about 55. So that was again a range of different life skills and experiences that the diversity brought. So that made the conversations really interesting, because everybody comes in from all different angles, right? A person who was from a diplomatic background, he came in from an angle which was completely different from my angle, which was IP and how IP works. And to a person who came from creative arts, which was completely different to mine, because I'm a very analytical person and they're very lateral thinkers. So you have those conversations, and it makes you and your thinking richer. Because you would otherwise never get to hear those conversations. And we were all talking about AI, but from a very different angle. So it gave me amazing insights into how the world will work in future, because all we thought about was how is this going to make applicable to in future, in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the track, how is it going to get scaled up? So there were really great insights from that. And one of the critical skills I learned was sit back and listen, listen, listen. You do not come to a conclusion until you listen to almost every person in the room, and then you basically sit back and then digest all that information, and then you come to a conclusion. So that's very helpful in your any day-to-day life, or my professional life, or at home. You have to listen. You have to listen to everybody in the room and then come to a conclusion. So this was a really great experience. And pre-COVID, we were lucky actually that our course, like the entire duration of the academic studies, finished before COVID hit. There was a bit of overlap between our capstone projects and COVID, but apart from that, everything, the teaching part was done before COVID hit, so we were lucky. The second cohort, which is undergoing the training now, is now in that digital environment where they're working from home and attending lectures from home. So it's really difficult for them, and I feel for them. But we were lucky enough to have that. And I did as I said, I did my capstone in Western Australia for a mining company. Looking at their autonomous operations and how to make them efficient, how to make them effective. So that was a really good experience as well.
In terms of the course in detail as such, Rishi, how would you unpack that? You know, I just wanted to live that 1 year of what you have lived in this 2 minutes to 3 minutes. You talk about technology, talk about process, talk about policy, applications and whatnot. How do you do that?
So unpack is a really great word, because we actually did that in the first semester. We unpacked everything. We took the concept of AI and we broke it down into its components. Components like sensors, components like data, components like algorithm, components like actuators. All these little things that actually make it AI. AI is a bundle of all the components that come together to make it AI, right? It's not something that just you can buy off the shelf. You got to put it together. So we actually broke it down into its components and looked at each component and how it plays a role in AI, and then explored that. So that was the first semester. And second semester was bringing it all together into AI again, and then looking at how do all the individual components now play a massive role when it becomes a system. And we call it a cyber physical system, because it's cyber because it's in the cloud or it's in digital world, but it's a physical system because it's actually making an impact on the physical world. So hence it's a cyber physical system. So then we brought it back in the second semester as a cyber physical system. So really interesting insights you get when you start thinking systems thinking. We call it systems thinking, because now you're thinking about it as a technology system, you're thinking about it as an economic system, you're thinking about it as a social system. And then you come it from all different angles to see how it's going to impact the society in general, from the economic perspective, from policy perspective, from regulation, from social network connections. And that was really incredible. So a couple of projects I did, which will probably the listeners would find interesting. The first semester I did a project. We had to use a very loose concept of AI to build something small. So it wasn't really a massive project, a very small project. So what I did was obviously everybody has a smartwatch. So I wore a smartwatch for approximately 8 weeks, and I collected all my health data. I collected data like my blood pressure, my heart rate, my sleeping pattern, and all those things that the smartwatch collects. I also got some qualitative information about my sleeping pattern, what food I'm eating, if I'm drinking anything or not. All those things I collected. And then at the end of the semester, I put it together and I built what I called a virtual doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So what the virtual doctor would do, I built an algorithm behind, and again, I had no idea about coding, so I had to learn coding from scratch. I built a code in Python, and I had some algorithm in it to for the algorithm to go and look into my data and analyze my data to see if I was healthy. And if I was healthy, and I go to the gym every day, so that's something that you should know. I go to the gym every day, so if I was healthy, the algorithm would trigger a alarm on my phone, and it would wake me up at 6 in the morning to go to the gym. But if the data suggested that I wasn't healthy, the algorithm would not trigger that alarm. In fact, it would send a text message silently on my phone saying the reason I didn't wake you up is because you are not healthy and you shouldn't go to the gym. And by the way, I've also sent a message to your manager that telling them you won't be coming into the office today. So I sort of built a very small system.
Isn't it dangerous?
Really well.
Isn't it dangerous when you think about sending message to your manager when you have got a key deliverable for that particular day?
It is, but again, that's the beauty of it, right? You build something without actually thinking about the implications. What happens at workplace if I don't just show up? If AI decides that I shouldn't go, what happens to the workplace? What happens to my deliverables? What happens to my staff? How do they know? So these are the questions that you ask when you build an AI.
Yeah, absolutely. The business continuity automatically kicks in.
Yeah. So I think as Rishi, you said, you need to look at the full ecosystem. You can't build solution in isolation.
That's right, exactly right. You have to look at the entire system that the AI is going to play a role in.
And what support did you get? You said coding and programming was new to you. What support did you get in that front? And at the same time, what support did you get from the big players like Microsoft, the Googles, the Amazons, and whatnot? I believe they've got some helping going as far as this particular course is concerned.
So luckily for us, Microsoft, I think Microsoft, Macquarie, and KPMG were our key partners going into the course. And they are interested in how AI plays a massive role in society as well. So that's why they funded the first year of the course, and I think they're funding the second year as well. And what support we got from, we had amazing staff at 3AI. We had staff who were anthropologists, we had staff who were technical experts, we had staff, access to staff from ANU who actually were coders and who were experts in AI and experts in robotics. So we did have access to all those people. So if we were struggling, we could always go to them and go, hey, I'm struggling with this particular code. Can you help me out? But more importantly, the onus was on us to go and explore, because if you probably know this, a lot of AI and a lot of coding now happens in open source. There's a lot of information available on GitHub. You can download for free and you can start playing with the code straight away. So that was really helpful with open source. And I can't believe I'm saying that because I'm a person from IP background saying open source is great, but it's a conflict of interest sort of a thing for me. But last year it was interesting that those open source things, people are actually putting a lot of effort in putting those codes on GitHub, and they were really useful. But you have to tailor make them for your applications, and that's when I needed help from staff and from everybody there at 3AI to make sure that I can apply it for my particular solution.
That's great. Rishi, this is no brainer that the decision maker of the organizations must be guided well by technology and business experts. Now, this comes to a clear influencing capability to achieve organization outcome. What do you think are the challenges today with the decision makers? For example, when people are writing checks and not having enough appreciation for technology, how do you think you can influence them?
So one of our jobs, we were called disease vectors, and it's probably a wrong term now used in the COVID sense, but a disease vector is something that carries the thought and carries the philosophy of what we learned last year and spreads into society. So not really applicable with the COVID, but what our job is essentially is to influence those leadership positions, influence the policymakers, influence government to think about these things, because I understand everybody has expertise in a particular field. So even the leaders will have expertise in their field, but they won't understand how technology impacts their staff or technology impacts the society or policy in general. So our job is to make them aware of that. And one of the critical skills we learn in the sense was asking us the question. I don't have all the answers. I will never have all the answers because my expertise in polymer chemistry, my expertise is in management of people. I don't understand, I don't have expertise in, for example, education policy. I don't have expertise in, for example, infrastructure policy. So my job is to ask them questions to get answers out of them as an applied cybernetics practitioner, because I have the knowledge and I have the skills to interrogate an AI solution to see where it impacts. So this is where people like me, who the 16 others come in, is we go in organizations and we ask the targeted questions for them to understand the impacts and for them to come up with solutions, because they will have the expertise, the staff will have the expertise. So this is where this is where we see our usefulness in government, or even in, for that matter, in private sector. When people are developing AI solutions, you ask them the questions: what's the problem? What you're trying to solve, and how is this AI going to help you solve that problem? And when you ask that fundamental question, and then use the 3 AI framework. So 3 AI framework is the 3 A's and 3 I's. So the first A is autonomy, agency, assurance. So autonomy of AI, agency of AI, and assurance of AI. And then the I's are intent, indicators. So intent of AI, so which is what I asked, why are we doing this? Indicators of AI, and interfaces, which is your screens, which is your devices, etc. So those 3 A's and those 3 I's, we can ask those targeted questions to get answers from leaders.
That's super amazing, man. Your passion is infectious, and the way that you're answering is clearly something that people should note. And thank you so much. And how do you think people can reach out to you?
They can reach out to me through LinkedIn. I've got a LinkedIn profile which is up to date, so they can reach out through LinkedIn, and anytime get in touch with me. I'm happy to share my thoughts, share my views. As I said, I'm learning as well. I continue to learn every day. I'm not an expert in AI, but what I do is collectively we can achieve it, because expertise are with people, and I can help them bring out those expertise and answer questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today, Rishi.
No, thank you for having me. It was wonderful to chat to you guys, and it's wonderful to relive your entire life in about 40 minutes.
Great to have you in our show, buddy. Thank you so much. Well done.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in, my friends. We have got thousands of people listening to this podcast and wanted to thank you all for the love and encouragement so far. Some of you have reached out personally to us and thanked as well for producing great quality content. It would be awesome if you like and follow our LinkedIn page, Inspiring Ideas, and please don't forget to hit the subscribe button from where you are listening. We are across all the key podcast channels: Apple, Google, Spotify, etc. We will see you with another great episode next week. Thank you so much.